Lo que vamos a hacer ahora, voy a presentarlo. Vamos a tener una charla ahora con dos expertos, colegas de Kineo, Inglaterra, que nos van a hablar acerca de la entrega de experiencias de aprendizaje de impacto basadas en personalización y datos. Va un poco de la línea por lo que habíamos hablado antes. Ellos se van a encargar de darles un panorama bien amplio. Ahora los voy a presentar. Son dos personas que considero son unas eminencias en este tema, con muchísimos años de experiencia. Desde que Kineo está cumpliendo 20 años este año. Y ellos han estado dentro de Kineo, no todo ese tiempo, pero bastante de ese tiempo trabajando. Tienen muchas horas de vuelo, digamos. Entonces, voy a presentar a Rory Lawson. Rory es el director de cuentas en Kineo EMEA, ayuda a los equipos de aprendizaje y desarrollo con visión de futuro a crear experiencias y estrategias de aprendizaje innovadoras. Con más de 14 años de experiencia en Kineo, Rory gestiona cuentas estrategias como HSBC, Barclays, BP, Novartis, Herbert Smith Freehills y muchas otras. Con más de 25 años de experiencia en la industria del diseño digital y el aprendizaje, ha liderado y entregado múltiples proyectos galardonados para clientes de diversos sectores y regiones. A Rory le apasiona aplicar conocimientos sobre innovación, pensamiento de diseño y tecnología de aprendizaje para crear soluciones educativas atractivas y de alto impacto que respondan a las necesidades y expectativas de los aprendices modernos. Además, tenemos con nosotros a Mella, que es el líder global de estrategia y diseño de aprendizaje de Kineo. Mathew ha trabajado en tecnologías web y aprendizaje durante más de 20 años. Lidera el equipo de estrategia y diseño de aprendizaje, ayudando a nuestros clientes a ofrecer soluciones de contenido creativo con alto impacto medible.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the day so far, the event, Kineo Learning Day. In this session, we want to talk to you about how we can engage your learners, your people through personalization. So just quick introductions, just so you know who Matt and I are. So I'm Rory Lawson. I'm an account director here in EMEA, based in the UK. Matt?
My name's Matt. I lead our learning design team at Kineo.
So, you know who the company is. As you know, Kineo brings the best learning design, interaction design to create affordable and effective learning solutions. And we look to solve some of those challenges by focusing first on the results and the desired skills and behaviors to get there. And personalization is really one of those tools that we play around with quite a lot when we're consulting around products. This year we celebrate 20 years. It's our birthday this year, 20 years of Kineo. And over the time, we've learned a lot about different organizational needs, their needs around compliance training, but also to understand learners and what makes a difference for them. And personalization is a really key tool that can support them. So we really want to kind of delve into what makes an impactful learning experience through data and personalization. So the focus of this presentation, for the context, we're exploring personalization in the context of digital content and digital learning experiences, not the platform side of things, but more the content delivery through e-learning. We know there are really good platform-based approaches to this. We want to focus on how to get it right within the e-learning kind of setup and design. So think of personalization as layers which offer unique ways to improve the experience as a learner undertakes their journey through the learning content. The problem statement we're working to, that we're trying to solve here, you've probably heard the term digital fatigue over the past couple of years. And through the type of client interactions we've had and the research that we've done, this theme of fatigue comes up time and time again, and it's a major area of concern. People seem busier than more than ever, and to be able to help them reduce that fatigue is kind of a critical kind of goal within the projects that we're supporting. So we get really familiar feedback, and at the heart of it is we hear that a lack of time is being cited as the biggest piece of feedback from learners in terms of what's a barrier to their learning experience. So we really want to kind of break that barrier down. The benefits of getting personalization right are really seen through some simple measures. So things like increased engagement, increased retention, and better performance. But that number one goal is to reduce the time spent training. So an individual going through a learning program, if they've got to do lots of different programs over the year, we can really help reduce that by setting up in the right way. Now, before we kind of carry on, we'll see how this works through the technology here. But how many here already create personalized learning? We can't see the room, so you might have to shout out, Rodrigo, to say who's putting up their hands.
¿Quiénes crean ya experiencias personalizadas de e-learning?
Okay. So let's jump ahead. Let's talk about. You do. And how many people would like to see examples, for example? Lots of hands going up there, Rodrigo? Yep. Okay, cool. Yep. Okay. We weren't too sure how the technology would work on that side because we can't see you. So sorry for that. Okay, so let's have a look at getting some of the basics right for creating a really good experience. So Matt, I'm going to hand over to you here.
Thank you, Rory. So we're going to look at personalization in levels. So we're going to start at one of the most kind of foundational levels, really effective, but something that we're probably most used to seeing, which is the personalization that comes from giving users choices as to how they can manipulate the way that the learning displays or acts. And this includes things like content filters, so filtering what content they see, role-specific pathways, UI or UX settings, accessibility settings, which include the visual appearance, and language and region selection, and more. So let's look at some examples of how these work. So we'll start off with the language and regionalization. So translating content into multiple languages is very common, but also you can regionalize the content, so people can not only select their language at the beginning of a piece of content, they can also select their region, which may be the same, may be connected, it might be different, but that allows people to see content that's very relevant to them. For example, they might see case studies that represent the business regulations in their part of the world. And also something else that you see right at the beginning is the role selector. So you select which role you have within a business. So with the role selectors are really interesting because they can make it relevant to fairly large categories within a business quite often, but they can only get so granular in a lot of experiences. So it might be you've got 250,000 people, but 5 roles. So you still have to think carefully about how other personalization techniques work alongside role selectors. But role selectors play a really key part in getting that kind of first level of content refined and making sure that we only give people what's truly relevant to them. And also then looking at the UI and the UX elements, a big part of that is accessibility. At Kineo, we really believe that accessibility is for the benefit of everybody. So no matter who the user is, having the ability to customize how they view and how they can interact with the learning is really important. And that can go from text size and manipulating where the content, how media plays, to actually doing things like flipping the screen colors, as you can see here, which can be really effective for people with certain visual requirements. So that takes us through some of the most common ones. Something that's a bit less common, but you probably see still every so often is the avatar. So that's something, again, that you set at the beginning, and that's moving away from that functional area into that more kind of personalization from the point of the fun and kind of putting your own stamp on things as a learner. So you can pick a character that represents you or create a character, and that character will follow you through the learning. And that can be really effective for certain audiences. So these are those elements that sit kind of across that self-selection layer that stands at the beginning, but we can go a step beyond that, can't we, Rory?
Yeah. So what we want to do is just go through a case study with you. So the case study we selected here is Rolls-Royce Engines, the aviation engine manufacturer. They came to us. They deliver a very large compliance program. They had lots of different training modules in place, and they came to us and they asked us to kind of redesign their program, look at it through a UX experience, a UI experience, but also from a learning design point of view as well. Key to their strategy, key to their thinking was to create an upfront assessment, a test out pathway for learners that kind of identifies knowledge gaps and flags areas of focus that they should be undertaking within the learning, but taking away different aspects of the learning that they don't need to kind of go back over. It's kind of recognizing their level of experience and recognizing them in terms of the learning that they've already acquired before. So let's go through the case study here. So the first thing that a user would do, they would select their language. So we have our language selector up front. So that's the first layer of personalization. As they come into the module, they want to find out why they're there, what they need to do. So in the very first section of the module, we kind of run through and introduce the subject. We bring them up to speed with important policies. We don't want to take people through content that's unnecessary. So we'd sometimes point the learner to the policy information. They can go and read it if they want to, but we would prefer them just to get a summary of the key facts, the key things that are going on, and perhaps self-attest that they've read the policy. Now, the key part of the strategy for Rolls-Royce was building in this upfront assessment. So the assessment is made up of a series of questions. You can randomize those, etc. But ultimately, they would go through questions about the learning to prove where they are and share their experience. This then rolls up into a results section where they get a summary of how they did within the assessment. So here you can see the questions that have been passed and the ones that have been they failed. So you can see question 4 was not passed, and that then gets taken through into how the menu is then set up for them. So what you see here, you see it's a dynamic menu. It's updated by that assessment. So you can see that I've completed the introduction, I've done the knowledge check, but I've also passed 2 of the activities that I was potentially needed to do. But I've got 1 activity that remains open because that was where I failed on a question. Now, everything is still optional, but learners can still go into every single subject if they wanted to. But the one that they do need to do to complete the learning is that activity 1, protecting yourself. So we're just updating the menu just to show them and guide them in terms of what they need to do. So they would go into that module, they would complete the exercise, they would complete the learning, and then the menu would then update and the module would be marked complete. So what we're doing here is setting a learning design pattern. So it's a learning model, and we call these patterns in design. It takes into consideration the learning itself, UI, the media, bringing that all together in a way that makes it easy for a learner to kind of undertake that learning. We want to take the guesswork out on how to navigate things, so we keep it consistent, and we wrap that with kind of like an experience layer. Now, by doing that, learning design patterns also add more value as well, because you can start to identify trends in learner behavior or things that may not be working so well within the learning. So we're connecting the modules with our Kineo Analytics service, and we're recording data in the background about what the learner is doing, how they're doing it, whether they're getting stuck on a question, whether they're spending longer on a piece of content than we would originally imagine as a designer. And all of that data creates kind of like a continuous improvement cycle. So when you go back to, say, to refresh the content, you kind of understand what's worked, what hasn't worked from the previous design and the implementation before. So all of this data is really helping Rolls-Royce kind of imagine and reimagine what the design will be in the future and where to focus. But let's take that further. That's quite a straightforward model of design. What we're starting to see now are journeys that are around personalized skills. So Matt, you're going to take us through this one.
Yeah, indeed. So we've seen an example there where there's a load of great data being delivered. We're paring down that journey so that we're only seeing what's relevant. But we can build this out so that it's giving a lot more insight, personal insight, a lot more agency to the learner as to what they do next in their learning journey. And that's by focusing on the results and the skills and behaviors that they have, and actually giving data and insights back to learners themselves so that they can use that to direct their own learning. So if we give you an example for this, if we move forward, Rory. Imagine having a situation where you start with a simulation. In this case, it's data protection. So we've got an average employee here. They've just started their new job. And if we move forward, Rory, you can see that they're posting some highly secure things on social media that they shouldn't. So in this situation, you have to identify one when you see an issue, so you can stop the video, and then you identify what you should do next, which you can see here. And through this kind of scenario, through this simulation, we might follow a full day in the life. We capture data on people's skills, which areas they've scored highly in, where their strengths are, and also where their gaps are, so they can focus on these. And from the back of this, we then generate, so if we move on again, a skill profile that we can see at the end. So we can very clearly see each of the individual skills that we've been tested on, and we can see where our areas are, where we might need to top up. And we can actually click each of these and get a deeper dive into what that skill is and what it means. And I think we've got a screenshot of that, haven't we, as well, Rory? So yeah, you can see more about the skills required in dealing with an insider threat. And this gives you that view of where you performed. This isn't just behind the scenes. You can go back over and even see the more insight about where you got certain things correct and incorrect. So you can get that overview of where your exact gaps are and where you need to improve. So it gives you some great revision through this. And what we can also do from the back of this is then give those personalized reminders or those personalized pieces of learning that you might need based on that. So not only do you have that profile, which gives you a really clear notion of where your strengths and gaps are, but we can also deliver some key bits of, in this case, kind of compliance learning for those areas where we can see there are gaps. So this is very similar in some respects to the Rolls-Royce example, but takes it further because it gives that overview and that extra layer of insight to learners themselves. But there's more, isn't there, Rory?
Absolutely, yeah. So let's lead on to looking at kind of where we're heading in the future. Well, maybe not so far in the future. Maybe some of this stuff is actually what we're doing today. So we're looking at hyper-personalization. Now, generative AI has come onto the scene. AI has been around for a long time, but generative AI has an ability to kind of generate those human-like interactions. And this is great when you start to think about the opportunity for digital learning, e-learning, any kind of online form of interaction. And we believe that generative AI will have a fundamentally disrupt how humans kind of behave and interact with content on screen. So if you think about the type of apps that you use now day to day, so you might have Google Gemini, for example, where the interface is actually something that you're talking to. You can click a button, you can talk to the AI, and it will give you a response. And it's taking away a lot of that interface. You don't need to click on anything further other than just talk, and it will reply and assess in terms of what you're saying. So this has a real kind of opportunity for e-learning. And this is what we're calling the age of hyper-personalization, because we can go much further. So if you think about the humble MCQ, one of our favorite tools within a designer's toolkit, is about asking a question. But the interface that we're asking that question through tends to be something like a multiple choice question. And a learner can guess an answer. There's only 3 options on screen, for example, here. They can guess. So they may guess right and they can carry on, but maybe have not taken away the real learning. So if we can take away that interface and move it more into an interface where you can kind of talk through the AI and get a response and an assessment through that interface, then that is creating a much more effective learning kind of pathway. So what Rodrigo will probably show you later is this example here. So this is a piece of work that the team in LATAM are working on. So the idea being is taking a simulation, thinking about the challenge points, the assessment points, and redesigning that assessment to work through the AI interface. So you might hear from this person, and then you're given the opportunity to respond. So you record your response directly rather than selecting a multiple choice. It then makes the assessment and can compile that information using kind of like a rubric. And sorry, I don't have a screenshot of it here. Rodrigo will show you later. But the rubric can give you kind of like an assessment framework to how well you did within that simulation. And it's interpreting and it's doing the assessment. So it's more of a free format type of way of assessing people. There's no guessing. They have to use the grey matter to kind of get to the right solutions and answers. So it's a better form of assessment, much more realistic. And we believe this is kind of where the technology will take us, is that deep integration with e-learning, so we can remove some of the barriers that have stopped people and get to better learning outcomes and better learning experiences. So we're entering to that age of hyper-personalization. Now, I think we've come up to the half-hour mark there. So I don't know, Rodrigo, are there any questions in the audience that we can help with?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
¿Tiene alguna pregunta
Okay.
para los señores? No, puede ser en español, le traducimos. Si alguien tiene algo. No question. Thank you very much, Rory.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Sorry you cannot see the audio. Next time we will.
That's all right, no problem.
Thank you very
It's
much.
a very nerve-wracking thing to do when you can't see your audience. So, but I hope you're all enjoying the day. Lovely to meet you. We're here in a very rainy Britain at the moment, so you've probably got the warmer weather where you are. So.
No, we have a rainy day.
Oh, you got rainy days, well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye-bye.